So once again, we apologize for the little glitches we have encountered. Totally sorry about that. They were not anticipated, but having occurred, we have done everything within our powers to, regularize the situation. So we await Mr. President. Please don't go away. Stay tuned and stay blessed. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Atta. And I also join in apologizing for commencing this meeting late, and also for the glitches that we've experienced starting this meeting. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this virtual meeting, the training for our observers. I thank you for volunteering to be a part of this process. This is a reckoning point in our life as a nation. This election is one that everyone is interested in because of the peculiar situation that we found ourselves in our country. And we realizing our importance in the scheme of things and the role that we have to play in the scheme of things, as it has always been, must put together all that we need to do to fully participate in the process. And the observation of the election is also a part of our participation in the process of the election, forthcoming election, the election of our leaders, those who would occupy the constitutional offices that have been created by the Constitution. This administration, by the special grace of God, has consistently reiterated the fact that the Nigerian Bar Association, and indeed the entire legal profession, owes Nigerians sincere participation in the process of the election in 2023. It is not just exceptional to 2023 election, it is our continuous mandate to do so, to continue to deal with Nigerians honestly and sincerely and provide leadership to them. I just want to reiterate some of the few things that you already know. The Nigerian Bar Association, obviously, it is not partisan. And like I would say, or like I said previously, we are for everybody and for nobody. We are not partisan. We do not belong to any political party. And so we must remain neutral in everything that we do. That also includes our observation of the elections. And that is why I did not hesitate to exclude those of us that have been selected to participate in the observation of the election in Akwa Ibom State by reason of the news that hit the social media on the adoption of a political candidate by supposedly the Nigerian Bar Association in Akwa Ibom, for us to maintain our neutrality, for us to continue to elicit that confidence of the public in the neutrality of the Nigerian Bar Association. It became very necessary for us to do that. So that is was intended to keep us in the place where we're supposed to be, and we must not allow anything to change that neutrality. We are committed to free, fair, credible, all-inclusive, and like the INEC chairman would say, verifiable election. Those are the things that we should be looking out for as we go out to observe this election. I'm also an election observer myself, so I will be participating in this meeting as our resource persons take us through the code of conduct for observers, our rights and our obligations, our limits, what we are permitted to do, the things that we are not permitted to do, how we should conduct ourselves in the course of this exercise to maintain our neutrality as NBA election observers. I thank you so very much for participating in this election. I want to also thank all our resource persons that have come to share their wealth of experience and knowledge with us to properly guide us in the discharge of our observation duties. I really would like to thank the INEC chair for the support that he has given to us and also the promises that he has made to support whatever Nigerian Bar Association has to do in order to contribute our quota in the process of this election. I thank Mrs. Nkechi Abu. I thank Sunday Onubi, Paul James, our resource persons that have come to speak with us. Thank you, the first vice president, who has been given the responsibility to drive this process this time, Mrs. Linda Rose Bala, for accepting this onerous task and responsibility, which from all indications, she's doing everything possible to make sure that we have an organized monitoring team and we go on to do what we are expected to do in the process successfully. So with these few remarks from me, I want to thank you again for coming. I would also ask that you stay back, relax, and enjoy the wealth of experience that our resource persons have got to share. Thank you very much, Alta, for being the moderator for this program. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. President, for those very kind words. And above all, thank you for that very, very insightful opening remark. We were most grateful and we thank you for giving us the proper direction to commence. At this point, we'll go to the first speaker or the first resource person for the day, in the person of Mrs. Nkechi Abu. Mrs. Nkechi Abu is a deputy director, election monitoring and observation division with INEC. Very seasoned, resource person. So we call you to give us what you have for us this morning. Thank you so very much. You have the floor.
Okay, good morning. Am I on? Hello? Hello?
Mrs. Nkechi, you're on. So please.
All right, thank you.
Yes, please proceed. Feel free and let us have the entire wealth of wisdom that you have brought to the table this morning. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alta. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, good morning, President of the Nigerian Bar Association and other gentlemen of the bar. Thank you for this opportunity to interact with you this morning. Like Mr. Alta said, my name is Nkechi Abu, and I'm just going to be interacting with you on the code of conduct for election observers, specifically INEC expectation from election observation. Having been accredited as observers in this election, the 2023 general election, what are we looking at? What is the commission looking at from you? What are we expecting from you? Now, I have also noted from the very beginning that NBA has been part of the electoral process over time. And so you've been in the process of observing election, general election, obstacle elections. So this is just like the president and Mr. Otta had said earlier on, rubbing our minds together, reminding ourselves of what we have been doing and just seeing how we can do it better. So once again, I welcome all of us to this little time we have this conversation. I'm starting with the learning objective for this conversation. For every learning process like this, we always set out an objective to achieve so that at the end of this little time we're spending together, we'll reappraise and see whether we've achieved these objectives. And so for this conversation, we have just 3 objectives set out for us. The first one is that at the end of this conversation, we all will have been able to list the roles and responsibilities of an election observer that you are. And then we should be able to state the essential issues in the election observation. And lastly, we should be able to list the elements of INEC regulations and processes for election observation. So these 3 objectives were set to achieve as we move on. So introduction. I think the president and Mr. Otta had actually taken my introduction. They've already told us what election observation is and what it's set to achieve. So I'll just run through my introduction here. I just started by saying that election observation is a valuable tool for improving the quality of election. Okay, so just like we have said earlier on, and then, of course, I don't need to overemphasize this because that it speaks for itself, is that without election observation, we will not have been able to reach the heights we've reached as a commission now, because a lot of what you see as improvements in the electoral process come from recommendations submitted to the commission from election observers who have gone out to the field. So it goes without saying that it is a valuable tool towards improving the quality of elections. And then we said that the conduct of election is particularly enhanced by an effective interaction between the commission and observer groups. And of course, you bear with me that the commission has always had this continuous quarterly interactive sessions with CSOs and particularly observer groups, rubbing minds together, all towards seeing how we can improve the electoral process. So it enhances effective interaction between the commission and observer groups. And then we want to particularly note that the commission as an EMB actually needs monitors. The commission needs monitors that will report back to us and appraise us and let us know how far we have fared with the preparations we've done, with the conduct of the elections. So as election observers, you are monitors for the activities of the commission in the conduct of this election. And you are meant to get whatever gaps we have or we might have, and of course, help us recommend how we get them filled up. So we see that as observers, we are actually looking up to, the commission is actually looking up to you to come back to us and help us fill whatever gaps you might have noticed during the conduct of election. And then finally, we're saying that observers are not to sit in judgment. This is very, very important to us, and it's to us in the commission, because we know you are all lawyers, and we are careful not to be judged by you at the end of the day. So we're saying that we're having this conversation to say that while you are in the field, you are not actually sitting in judgment over the commission, but we're expecting you to provide unbiased and forthright assessment of the conduct of the election, and of course, profile concrete solutions to observe lapses. So it's not for you to, at the end of the day, come say, oh, this commission has done this, that commission has not done this well. Yes, you tell us what we do, but please do not crucify us at the end of the day. It is a learning process. We have always told ourselves that the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement. And so we expect that whatever you're going to come up with, whatever recommendation you're going to come up with at the end of the day will help us move forward and improve our processes. So we just start by saying it's taken for knowing that we all know who an observer is, but because we're having this conversation, I just have us look at it again. Who is an observer? We all know an observer is a person that is sponsored by an organization that was accredited by an EMB like INEC to observe elections within the standards and guidelines put in place by the Commission and in line with international best practices and standards. We're just trying to say that no one person can just stand up and go to the field and be an observer. If you are going to be an observer in an election, you must be sponsored by an organization. Of course, like yours, MBA is sponsoring you, and that organization, like MBA, must have been accredited by INEC for this election. You see that before now, you can go to the field, you see some persons wearing tags of previous elections, and some persons will tell you, oh, we are accredited in previous elections. But no, for every election, there is always an accreditation process undergone by interested observer groups. And so for you to be in the field, you must belong to one of these groups that must have been accredited in this general election. And what are we to do as an observer? You are there to check the processes and then be able to ascertain whether the commission acted within our guidelines and within international best practices. Okay, so having seen who an observer is, we're going to be asking ourselves, what is election observation? This also, I know, is taken for granted because we already know from Mr. Ota and the president this morning, they've told us what election observation is. So I will just run through this again. All right. I hope you're hearing me. Sorry, I didn't know what, something went wrong. I think it's technical, and I just learned I was muted. Sorry. So I don't know where we stopped, but I just go over again who an observer is. I just said that an observer is a person sponsored by an organization that was accredited by INEC to observe election within the standards and guidelines put in place by INEC and in line with international best practices. Okay. All right. So we were asking ourselves, what is election observation? And as I said earlier on, the president and Mr. Ota had actually told us who an election observer is. I mean, what election observation is also. But for this conversation we're having, we just said that the election observation means the systematic, comprehensive, and accurate gathering of information concerning the electoral process. The second phase of it is that it's an analysis of such information and the drawing of accurate conclusions and offering of relevant recommendations. So the first set of it says, and that is for you as a field observer that will be in the field on 25th of February, that is next weekend, and on the 11th of March. What are you going to be doing? You're going to be conducting a systematic and comprehensive observation of the entire process. Of course, we know when we go along, we'll find out how these processes flow. So you're going to be systematic, you're going to be comprehensive, making sure that you are observing every stage of the process, and then making sure that the information you're gathering is accurate, because at the end of it all, it's going to be analyzed, and then conclusions will be drawn, and the commission certainly will be looking forward to recommendations that will be coming from MBA at the end of the day. So we now go to ask ourselves, why should we observe election? This also has been spoken to, so I will also run through it, because I know basically what we're looking at is the conduct of an election observer, the code of conduct, sorry. So, but I'll run through this. Why do we need to observe election? I just want to reinstate what we had said earlier on. It helps in enhancing public confidence in the electoral process, like the president told us. It helps in promoting transparency, because of course, by the time the Nigerian populace get to know that yes, what they are being told, what the result of the election is not just as INEC has said, but that we have unbiased bodies like the MBA that are being in the field, collaborating with what INEC has said, or confirming or not confirming what INEC has said. It helps to promote transparency in the process. We also said that it eases political tension. Why? Because rumors can be carried here and there. People are saying what they want to say sometimes, which might not be true. But when we have observer groups like yours come out to make public statements, explaining what's happened in the field, or trying to, ascertain whether what has been said is true or not, it goes a long way to douse tension in the polity. So election observation is very, very, very important, because words or statements or briefings from you help to douse tension in the polity. We also say it helps to deter improper electoral practices. Yes, because by the time I, as an election officer in the field on election day, by the time I'm carrying out my responsibilities and I realize that I have observer groups or observers, field observers, watching over what I am doing, what does it do? It keeps me in check. And so I behave myself and I do what I am supposed to do. So having you in the field on election day has a way of ensuring that things are done well the way they ought to be done. And we also say it enhances credibility of the electoral process. That has been said, enhances legitimacy of the electoral outcome. Of course, you know that at the end of the day, by the time the result that will be announced by INEC is confirmed and collaborated by unbiased groups like yours, we know that the winners of the elections will have more legitimacy. And then Nigerians will, of course, believe in the outcome of the election by the time we have reports from you collaborating whatever the commission must have announced. And then we also say it mitigates potential electoral related conflict, just like we said about dousing tension. Election observation also mitigates potential electoral related conflict by the time we have given our verdict at the end of the day. What is the objective, or what are the objectives that this election observation is set to achieve? Of course, because whenever you want to engage in any process, you want to engage or pursue any goal, you must have your objectives that you're set to achieve, so that, of course, when you achieve them, you know. When you don't, you know. So we're saying for election observation, as you go out to the field on the 25th of this month or on the 11th of March, what are you out to achieve? Of course, the first is to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the whole electoral process and offer an impartial, balanced, and informed assessment at the end of the day, assessment of the whole process. And like we said, what we set to achieve, we are set to achieve increased public confidence increase public confidence in the electoral process by encouraging all stakeholders in the election to participate freely and in a conducive environment free of intimidation and violence. What does it also achieve? It helps to identify strengths that we have said, the earlier speakers have told us. It helps to identify strengths, opportunities that, this can be done better, challenges that we encounter that we can find a way out of going forward, weaknesses of the system that can be harnessed into best practices at the end of the day. These are some of the objectives, and of course, finally, to assess the extent to which the electoral outcome reflected the will of the people in line with international best practices. You know, at the end of the day, the important thing that Nigerians want to see is, did their choice, was their choice announced? You know, that's the general and the main thing at the end of the day, the main outcome everybody is looking forward to. Did the commission just announce who they want to announce, or did the people's choice emerge? And by the time observers are in the field on election day, they will actually help to assess to what extent the conduct of the election actually reflected the will of the people. These are the few objectives that we think election observation that you're going to be engaging with will achieve at the end of the day. So what to observe and report on. What are you going to observe? I think this is one of the main things we actually intend to discuss today. What are you going to observe when you get to the field? Some persons will be in the field on 25th, some will be maybe on the 24th, because I know that some of us will want to observe probably the distribution of electoral materials that will commence probably on Thursday before the election. So what are we really going to observe? Whether we're going to be there on Thursday, we're going to be there on Friday or Saturday, what do we want to observe? The first thing we want to observe is the preparedness of INEC to conduct the election. INEC has said it over and over and over again, we're ready, our logistics, we're ready with everything we need to do, we're ready to be in the field on 25th. So you're going to be ascertaining where the logistics there, where all the things we ought to do, prepare or get ready, maybe the materials we ought to get to the field, are they there? The sensitive, the non-sensitive, the personnel we claim to have engaged and trained, are they there? The security personnel, are they there? To what extent have we really prepared? What is the level of the preparedness of INEC? That is part of what you're going to be seeing and be observing on that day. Where, of course, we know that it is the practice of the commission that the eve of election, the election personnel within a ward are usually camped in a rack, the registration area center, maybe a primary school or secondary school, preparing them, sharing materials, having refresher courses and enabling them to get to the field early in the morning. All of these things you are supposed to observe and find out, was INEC really prepared? Were these things, were they put in place? Were they really ready for the election? So you're going to be observing the preparedness of election for this preparedness of INEC for this 2023 general election. You're also going to be observing the conduciveness of the environment for all the stakeholders to participate freely without intimidation and violence. Of course, we know what the condition is or what the state of the nation is. But then the commission has been collaborating with security agencies, and they've assured us that they're on the ground. And so we're going to be checking on that day, was the environment conducive for the conduct of election? Was it conducive for all stakeholders to do their job? For the observers, did you have a conducive place to stay? Were you allowed to do your job? So we're going to actually check in the conduciveness of environment, or where the PWD is giving the environment to participate in the election. All of these things are going to be assessing on election day. And again, you're also going to be checking the adherence of the commission to the laws, the guidelines, and other norms that we ought to have. Yes, no, this way. Okay. So we're going to be checking whether we adhere to international, continental, regional, administrative norms governing electoral conduct. We're going to be checking that on election day. And then, sorry. Okay. Should move on. Okay. Okay, we're also going to be checking. Can I hide this? Yes. Okay. Sorry, please. Sorry for the interruption. We're also going to be checking whether or not other election stakeholders acted professionally with respect to their respective tasks. We are the security men there, we are the media people there, all other stakeholders in the electoral process. And of course, observer groups like yours too, were they all there? Were they able to do their jobs well? Did they conduct themselves professionally? Even the election officials, did they do their job as they ought to do? All of these things you're going to be checking on election day, whether all these things were there. And then the presence and role of security officers, we have said that before, is very, very key, that the security officers should be there. And of course, for every polling unit, we should have at least 4 security personnel, just like we're supposed to have 4 election personnel, the presiding officer, and 3 assistant presiding officers on election day for every polling unit. You're going to be checking whether these ones are all there, or whether or not the AMB was autonomous, impartial, and administered the process efficiently without fear and favor. You're also going to be checking that. Did we address all we need to address? Did we attend to all stakeholders and all the contestants the way we ought to do? Were we showing preferences or favoritism to any group? You're going to be checking how far we were impartial in all that we ought to do. And the extent to which the electoral outcome, of course, like we have said earlier on, reflected the will of the people. Now, I want to generally say that the electoral process moves, like I said earlier on, from the time that the election officials get to the field on election day. Usually they're supposed to be there from 7:30, setting up the polling units. So as an observer, you get to the polling unit on election day. You're supposed to check, was the setting okay? Were they 4 officials as they ought to be? Were the materials complete for every of the polling units? You're going to be checking that. Do we have complete set of material? Because if we have, for instance, in a polling unit, we have 500 voters, the commission is supposed to deploy 500 ballot papers in that polling unit. Okay, the commission is supposed to deploy 1 beavers to that polling unit. The commission is supposed to deploy a whole lot of other materials. So if you are able to get there on time on election day, you should be able to check whether all of these things were there in the right quantity. And again, when you want to start, I'm just saying this generally, when you want to, when they want to start, you're going to be checking whether the beavers is loaded or not, if you are there on time, whether the ballot box is empty. All of these things we ought to check when we get there on election day. Okay, so, and again, at the end of the polling and counting of results at the polling units, we're also going to be checking whether the results were uploaded using the beavers. I'm sure maybe somebody will take you through what is expected on election day. I don't know about that. But then you're going to be checking whether the election result was uploaded at the polling units, whether the result poster was posted, because every presiding officer is meant to fill a form called EC60E, which is just a copy of the main result sheet, and then pasting it there before they leave the polling unit. So if you're there on election day, you're going to be checking all of this from the very setting up of the polling unit, of the polling unit, to the counting of results and pasting of result sheets, and finally the uploading of the results from each of the polling units. So these are what we expect you to look out for on the 25th of February and on the 11th of March. Now we're looking at the code of conduct for election observers. Having observed the election over and over and over again, I'm sure as members of MBA, we all have this at our fingertips, what we ought to do, how we ought to conduct ourselves, what we ought not to do. So they are just summarized in a few lines this way. We said every field observer is expected to, 1, abide by the laws of Nigeria and INEC guidelines and regulations for conduct of election. Of course, INEC has a guideline 2022. It has issued out the Electoral Act. You as lawyers, I don't need to tell you what the Electoral Act says concerning election, what the Constitution says, what the guideline says. You're going to be finding out whether when we get there in the field as INEC staff or election officials, did we abide by the laws? And you as observers, you're supposed to know all of these things and abide by them. And then again, you're supposed to abide by the guidelines and other terms of references and instructions given to you by your body. That's the organization, the MBA. You know what you ought to do as a lawyer, as a member of MBA. I think I heard your president saying that someone else, a group was punished for doing something wrong. Of course, you know, as MBA, you ought to abide by the guidelines and the rules and the laws of the land. So whatever is the guideline of MBA, you're supposed to also abide by it, because remember, when we are looking at who an observer is, we told us it's a person that has been sponsored by an organization. So you must also make sure that you abide by the guidelines of your organization. And thirdly, you are supposed to abide by the principles of election conduct. You know, the principle of integrity, impartiality, transparency, and professionalism. And of course, integrity means that you're true to yourself. If you get to the election, to the polling unit on election day, you are an observer. You're not a polling agent. You're an observer. You're not representing the interests of anybody. You're there to observe the election without bias and report on what you have seen. Impartiality, of course, even if you have any leaning politically, you know that on that day you ought to be impartial, observe the process, not to represent anybody's interest. Transparency, be open with what you do. If you need to ask questions, ask questions. And of course, part of the transparency, we need you to make sure you wear your tag to identify yourself as an election observer anywhere you are. We need you also to ask questions genuinely and not interfere with any of the processes. And we're talking about being professional in what you do. As lawyers, you know how to conduct yourself, you know. And there's this particular thing I always want to say. I know lawyers have a level of code of dressing, but we've had 1 or 2 cases where you see observers dress in colors that tilt towards a particular political party, and that brings issues in the field. So we also want you to be professional about even the way you dress on election day to make sure that you show neutrality in all that you do. So let's be professional in conducting ourselves. Let's be professional in making sure we're taking the notes we need to take, observing what we need to observe, not to concern ourselves with just maybe what is happening around you. Let's be more concerned and professional with observing the process, the conduct of the election is very key. And then, of course, you're also, as observers, you're also supposed to bring irregularities to the attention of election officials. It's part of what you need to do. In as much as we say, do not interfere with the process. If there are irregularities that you note, you have the presiding officer who is in the field. When you see that he's a little less busy, you can approach him. You can bring irregularities to his attention. And then, of course, if you cannot get his attention, on that day, we're going to be having election monitors, election supervisors, 2 key persons who will be there in all the wards. They'll be going around the polling units. So when you note them, of course, they'll be in INEC jackets. You'll see them. You should be able to draw their attention. And if none of them is there, of course, draw their attention of the security personnel to any irregularities. And of course, if all of these do not work, you can always escalate. You can always decide to, refer to whoever your state coordinator is, your local government coordinator, or whoever your line of, depending on your line of communication. But also try as much as possible not to cause any tension, not to disrupt the process, but please draw attention to irregularities that needs immediate attention so that the process can go on well. And then part of also code of conduct, not to hold media interviews within the polling unit. We are lawyers, yes, we know the processes, yes, but please let's try as much as possible not to grant interviews arbitrarily like that. We expect to hear from NBA as a body at the end of the day. So we would not really appreciate individual observers in different fields saying different things concerning the conduct of the election. I don't think that would be professional. It would be better you pass on, whatever issues you have, whatever thing you think need to be said through the right communication channel that you have within your organization, and then so that we will not say things that will somehow disrupt the process. And then not to handle election materials or interfere in the conduct of poll, counting of ballots, or collation of results. We don't need you to interfere. We've said that over and over again, but we need you to draw our attention where we need things to be done well. But we should be able to draw a line between interfering with the process and drawing attention to irregularities. So these caps of the code of conduct for election observers. So we're going to be looking at rights and privileges of an election observer. We have a lot of rights, we have a lot of privileges, and so I really like you to take note of what you need to do, who you are, what you have access to on election day. First of all, we say you have access to all polling units that you have been assigned to. I'm sure a lot of you will be assigned to particular LGAs, particular LGA. So for whichever LGA you are assigned to, you have access to all the polling units within that LGA. You have access to all the collation centers within that LGA, and of course our INEC offices. So you have your tag that will give you access. You'll be given your ID card that will be giving you access to all the polling units. So nobody will hinder your entry into any of the polling units. And of course, depending on what MBA wants to do, whoever is assigned to be in collation centers, you also be given access to it. Access to official information and right to seek clarification. Of course, if you're confused over anything, before the end of this presentation, I'll give us the line of those we need to speak to whenever we have issues, whether at the LGA, state, and all. So you have access to information. Attendance to meetings convened for the briefing of election observers at all state capitals. Yes, for the commission normally does that at all the 36 states and even FCT. We're going to be holding a briefing of observers, I think either on Thursday or Friday or Wednesday before the election. So please be there as an election observer. Is there that you're going to get the information you need to get within the states? Is there you're going to find out whether there are danger zones? Is there you're going to get the number of the security men on ground and the numbers of all the INEC personnel within your state? So that it's very, 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 very key that whatever state you're posted to, you try as much as possible to attend. It's your right to be there at the briefing, to ask questions, to seek clarifications concerning your particular state of posting. The right to observe the entire election process, it is your right, starting from distribution of materials, maybe that will start on Thursday. It's your right to observe all the processes, including distribution of materials, counting of ballots, collation of results, declaration of results. I'm sure MBA is among the few organizations that have been granted access even to the National Collation Center. You'll be sending your representatives there. So you're actually going to be observing the entire, you have a right to observe the entire process. You also have the right, just like I said earlier on, to call the attention of election officials to any observed irregularities, and then communicate with any other person other than the voter inside the polling unit with permission from the presiding officer. The presiding officer, like I said earlier on, is in charge of the polling unit. He is in charge. So if there's anything you need to do, you need to know, it is him, you see. But I always advise, if you need to find out things, please go on time, because sometimes you want to ask them questions and they are under tension. The voters are there, you know, trying to stampede them. And then as an observer, you want to come and say, excuse me first, you know that it won't be good. So if you really need to work, do well, find out, either you go there on time or you check when he's less busy, and then of course you have a chat with him. Is this your right as an observer to communicate with the officers in the field, but not the voter? Please, the voter should not be spoken to for any reason, so that you will not be seen to be influencing his or her choice. Then you have protection and security while on election duty. We said that earlier on. When you wear your tag, you will not be harassed by the police, and nobody will stop you from moving within your local government of deployment. So these are your rights and privileges. And then again, this is just an addition, because we're done with the code of conduct, we're done with what we need to observe. But I just felt, well, as an addition, let me just share with us a few of the forms, essential forms and materials that you need to know, because if you need to report on the process, then you need to know certain basic things. First is the BVAS. We all know BVAS is the in thing, is everywhere, bimodal voter accreditation system. You know, the BVAS is going to be used for accreditation of voters at the beginning of the polling on election day. Every voter that comes to the field, to the polling unit, once it comes in, is online, and it passes through the APO3, who is checking the line, it goes straight to the APO1. The Assistant Presiding Officer 1 is the one who uses the BVAS, and is supposed to authenticate the voter. What does he do? Of course, you know what he does. He takes the card, the PVC from the voter, the permanent voter's card. He scans it, and then of course he authenticates the voter either by his fingerprints or his facials. Now it's no more like the card reader when it's just the fingerprint. Now the facial is even a lot faster. So it's a bimodal process. It's either with the fingerprint or with the facial. So when it does that and the voter is accredited, again, the BVAS is also used for the upload of results at the end of polling. At the end of polling, when the results have been counted and recorded, the BVAS will be used to upload. Some people are always asking, what if there is issue of network? You know that for accreditation of voters, BVAS does not need network. It doesn't. It is for the upload of result that it needs network. And we have always told us that if there is no network at the polling unit, we can just move around to wherever there is a network and he will upload the results. That's what the BVAS is used for both the accreditation and upload of results. And we need to also let ourselves know that in this election, on the 25th of February, we're going to be having 3 elections to the seat of the president, the National Assembly, which is divided into 2, the Senate and the House of Assembly. So the results we have the EC8. EC8 series are just our result sheets. So you're going to be having the EC8A, you're going to be, for the president, you're going to be having the EC8 A1 for the Senate, EC8A2 for the House of Reps. And of course, you know, it goes that after the polling units, when you get to the RA, that's the ward collation, you have EC8B series. It goes on and on, EC8C, EC8D, and all that. So the EC8 series are just our result sheets. We need you to note. And of course, you know that they are specific to, I think it's to the LGA now. So for your own LGA, you need to just check to be sure you have these 3 result sheets on election day for this 25th. You have your, the one for the president, you have the one for the Senate, you have the one for the House of Representatives. And then the next thing I need to also note is this form EC60A. The form EC60A is called the PU result poster, the polling unit result poster. Is usually expected of every presiding officer without an exception, that at the end of counting and writing your result sheet on the EC8A, you're supposed to copy out the results after the party agents have signed and all. You copy it out on this form. It's a big form. You copy it out exactly what is in your EC8A to your EC60A and paste it. Every polling unit, it has it. There's none that will say, oh, I was not given. No. So they'll paste it. It's just called the people's result. So even if anybody who has voted there can come, the media can snap, everybody has access to EC60E because it's pasted at every polling unit. And then we have the EC40H, is the PWD voter information and statistics. It's the commission is very inclusive in all that it does, so it's taking into consideration the PWDs in every polling unit, in every LGA, and also we have the EC40H for the polling units. You have the 40H1 and all that you have for the LGA and all, but it is a form that is meant for PWDs to record how many of them came to the polling unit, how many, and then of course they are disaggregated. You have those that are maybe for the blind and all of that. So EC40H is meant to be in every polling unit and it's supposed to take note of the PWDs that must have been there to vote. And like I said earlier on, this is also just an inclusion into this, just to let us know that we have some designated spokespersons for the commission. For those of us who are going to be in the headquarters, we already know, I'm sure these are the ones, the headquarters are going to be interacting with your leaders. But at the state level, when you get to the states, you have the resident electoral commissioner. I'm sure most likely, if it's chanced, he will be at the briefing. We have the administrative secretaries. But most importantly, I need you to note the head of Department of Election and Party Monitoring. Election observation is under election and party monitoring as a department. So in all the 36 states of the Federation, we have the HOD EPM. Please, when you get to the state, ensure that you meet with him, ensure that you interact with him, and get his number. Because when you are denied access anywhere or anything goes wrong, you can always dial him. If, for instance, maybe you're within the state capital or something. But he is very, very key. He's one key person that you need to interact with, speak to, because you are working under him as a department. And of course, we have the state HOD for voter education and publicity. He's also there to give you information concerning the election and all the processes. At the LGA, we have the local government electoral officer, who is the head at all the 774 local government areas. We have our offices. We have 774 electoral officers who also attend to you at the level of the local government. And for every local government, you have a staff from the headquarters who is either a supervisor or a monitor. There are always two of them, and they are there. You can always approach them. They will always be dressed in INEC jacket and ID card, so you can approach them. They are there. They are there for you. You have access to information from them. So please approach them. And if you are the polling unit, you can always speak to the presiding officer. He is in charge. But then, like I said earlier on, the headquarters will also be sending an RA, that's registration area or ward, by supervisor and monitor. So you also have them. If you can't get access to the presiding officer, you can get access to the supervisor or the monitor who will be there on the election day. Of course, this is just summary of what we have discussed. At the end of the day, we looked at who is an observer. We saw what election observation is, and then we asked ourselves why we must observe election at all, and what objectives we set to achieve. We're set to achieve when we get to the field on 25th and of course on the 11th of March. And when we get to the field, we also ask ourselves, what are we going to observe and report on? We saw that. And of course, the main thing today, what is your code of conduct? How should you behave yourself as a field observer? And we looked at the rights and privileges. Being lawyers, I'm sure you also want, you're keen on what are your rights, what are your privileges as a lawyer, and then as an election observer, sorry. And of course, we looked at obligation resting on all election observers. What are your obligations? And of course, we saw the designated spokespersons for INEC during election. Thank you very much. This is what much I had. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so very much for that prolific presentation. It was very cerebral, and we thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. We would now proceed to the question and answer. We will now proceed to the question and answer session. Am I audible enough? Just give us a moment.
Okay, so someone said loud and clear. Thank you so much for that beautiful feedback. I mean, this is the whole idea behind having these sessions. So we would proceed immediately to the question and answer segment. I have only observed 2 questions, but the 2 questions seem to be asking the same, to be in the same direction. And so I do not know if you can hear me, Mrs. Nkechi Abu. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can, sir.
Okay, so we have 2 questions in one because they're headed in the same direction. The question is, can observers or are observers allowed to vote? Are they allowed to carry on, discharge their constitutional duties of voting?
Okay, as a voter?
No, as an observer. Can observers also vote?
Yes, if you're within the place you registered, why not? If you're posted to work at your polling unit, yes. And part of what we tell election officials in our at the eve of election, we always remind them that if you have voters, if you have observers or party agents who are posted to work within their polling units, they are given priority. They are allowed. They are supposed to vote so that and the first before they continue their work. So you can vote if you are within the local government where you registered. Yes.
Okay, so that was a very apt response. Thank you so much. I think even before now, we had had these questions on the front border. People wanted to be sure, observers wanted to be sure that while volunteering to serve and give back to this country, that they will be able to also exercise their rights. And so this clears the air. While we wait for the questions, we'll give a little time to just have other people ask whatever questions that they want to ask. There are 3 take-homes for me in the presentation, which, I mean, we all agree that the presentation was very apt. I mean, if it was in a hall, you'd be greeted with a standing ovation, I can assure you. So the take-home for me is that we as observers, lawyers, should adhere strictly with the rules of engagement. I think you made that very clear, and honestly, at that point, can and should not be overlooked. So, yes, I saw a question about franchise guaranteed. Yes, it's the franchise is guaranteed. The second take home is that when all is said and done, nobody is allowed to issue any kind or any form of statement. Only the president should give that. I think we need to remind ourselves about that. So I think that will be that for that, because there are no other questions coming through. We will, in the absence of no other question, I think another thing that has been on the front burner is having the resource materials, the slides that you use. I'm sure that the organizers of this training would email the slides to all participants here present. So those in court, have no fear, entertain no fear. you have access to these materials. And please don't just keep them for keeping sake. Read them. The materials are very prolific. Trust me, it will benefit all of us. So thank you so very much once again. Okay, I think there's a question here. The question is, if we are going to be in just one polling unit, or we are allowed to visit several other polling units? I don't know. Can you answer that question, Mrs. Nkechi, please?
Okay. I'm sure when you were uploading your field observers, MBA, I'm very sure of that, because you were asked to upload people to specific LGAs. So you are not supposed to be confined, except if you have field observers in all of the polling units, but I doubt that. So for you, every field observer is meant to have a local government of coverage. So you're supposed to move from one polling unit to the other within your local government of coverage, not outside of it.
Okay, so thank you so very much, Mrs. Nkechi. Once again, you are the Deputy Director, Election Monitoring and Observation Division of INEC. We thank you so much for making out time to share with us this morning from your wealth of knowledge. Thank you so very much, and do have a wonderful day. At this point, we will quickly move on to the next speaker, who is on standby and will do justice to the next topic. Before then, I would like to restate that while the resource persons are sharing with us from their wealth of knowledge, if we have any questions, please let's quickly note them down, type them in and send them over, so that immediately the speaker is done, you'd be able to, the questions will be queued in for the resource person to give us answers. Thank you so very much as you comply. Can we please have our next resource person, please? Thank you so very much. Is available.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Sunday. Are you available now? Okay, so our next resource person is Mr. Sunday Onbi, a very cerebral legal practitioner. I'm sure that we will have a swell moment from his wealth of experience also. So sit back, don't touch the dial, and enjoy the next session. Thank you so very much. You're on, Mr. Sunday.
Thank you very much. Just a minute while I switch to my computer from the phone. I'm sorry, just 2 minutes, let me switch.
All right, that's fine. Okay, so while our resource person, Mr. Sunday, switches, I would like to inform the House that he will be speaking on the topic, the Electoral Act 2022. I'm sure the topic explains the personality involved in this conversation. So I'm sure we're all going to have a swell moment with him. It will be quite educating and very robust and interactive also. So sit back with your questions and all while he comes up and takes over.
Thank you very much. I'm here now.
All right, you're welcome, Mr. Sunday. Nice to have you here.
My pleasure.
Please, you have the floor. Thank you so very much.
All right. Good morning, Mr. President, Leonard Senior Advocates, and dear colleagues, it's my privilege to anchor this session. And what I'll be doing this morning will be as quickly as possible address the salient new provisions in the Electoral Act 2022. And when necessary, I would make references to the provisions of the old Electoral Act that have been repealed or amended. I've done some slides which I hope to share before I conclude this presentation. So for want of time, I would quickly address the relevant sections, the relevant provisions, which I think are important for us as practitioners, knowing the new provisions and the repealed provisions. Of course, we all know that the Act was amended last year, and by that we now have the new Electoral Act 2022. I will go straight to Section 3 of the Act, which provides for the establishment of an Electoral Commission Fund. It makes provision for the fund to cater for the activities of the commission, and that the funds for the commission shall be provided at least a year before the next election cycle. That's meant to address issues about like paucity of funds and the likes. Now, Section 8 also of the Act, the new Act, provides for the office of the Secretary of the Commission. And then Section 81C makes the tenure of the Secretary a 4-year term. Subsection 5 of the said Section 8 adds that it will be an offense for a member to be appointed, a person to be appointed as secretary who has failed to disclose his membership of a political party. And when that person is convicted for that offense, his penalty is 5 million naira or 2 years jail term or both. Section 9 of the Act, particularly 91B, was added, and that was meant to ensure that persons with disability are registered, no matter the form of disability they may suffer. Section 9.2 was also amended. 9.2 of the old Act was amended to reflect electronic form of register of voter. If you recall, previously we always resorted to the manual form of manual register in election petitions, or to say, oh, you must tick against the name of each individual manually. This time around, the amended commission must keep and maintain not only the manual form, but an electronic voters register. Now, Section 9.6 and subsection 6 of the Act was also amended to the extent that the number of days for registration of voters shall not be more than 90 days to the date of the election. Previously, that was under the old Act, it was 30 days. So you can register up to 30 days before the election cycle. But now it's 90 days. So the commission now has more time to compile the register and prepare for the elections. Section 15 of the Act was also amended, and it provides that you not only have electronic form of register, but it should be saved and duplicated. As such, should be kept in an electronic format. Section 16.3 was also amended. Now it's an offense to hold more than one valid voter register, voter card. So upon conviction of double registration or having more than one voter's card, you'll be liable to a fine of 500,000 naira, or in the old act, whereas in the old act it was 100,000 naira. So the monetary penalty was increased. Go to section 18 of the new act. Section 18 was amended, and the date for replacement of voters card is now 90 days before the election, just as the case for registration. It's now 90 days before the election. Previously, it can you hear me, please? I think I lost my connection for a bit. Section 19 was amended. It now provides that the commission shall not later than 90 days before the election appoint a 7-day period for voters registered to be displayed or published on their website for public scrutiny. So this allows persons with complaints to lodge their complaints with the commission for corrections. Registration of the display of the voters register shall be raised and addressed to the electoral commissioner in charge of the local government where you registered. And any staff also who fails to publish the voters register is an offense and shall be liable or 6 months imprisonment or both. Now, previously we had a section 20 in the old act, which provides for the time for publication of supplementary voters register. Now that provision in the Electoral Act has been repealed, or rather expunged. There's also a section 24 of the old act,
Okay, so distinguished colleagues, we apologize for that little glitch. We're getting it resolved and we'll be back shortly. Okay, Mr. Sunday, are you on? I still can't hear you. If you can hear me, please unmute your device.
Yes, I'm sorry. Network issues.
All right, you have the floor.
Okay. I understand I was lost from section 20 of the Act.
Exactly.
Good. Now, I was saying that section 20 of the Act, which provides for the publication of supplementary voters register, has been expunged. Now, we also have section 24 sub 1 of the old Act, which provides that any person that makes a false statement in an application for registration as a voter and a claim is found, to be false, has also been expunged. So you won't even be considered for voting, for registration in the first place. Section 24 of the new Act is an addition to section 26 of the old Act. Section 24(1), which is also an addition, provides for emergencies that affect an election, such as where persons are displaced. So it provides a latitude for the Commission to make provisions of displaced persons to vote in an election. In addition, it also provides for where elections are disrupted or there's a breach of the peace. The Commission can suspend elections for the period in that particular location. Now, section 26 is also an addition to the previous section 28 of the Act. Subsection 2 thereof provides for the oath of neutrality, and it will now be considered a dereliction of duty if a person violates the oath of neutrality, and it's an offense for which you could, if upon conviction, you could be sentenced to prison for a year or pay a fine of 500,000 naira or both. Section 27 of the Act, particularly section 27 subsection 3, is an addition to section 29 of the old Act. It makes it the responsibility of the Commission to request for deployment and assignment of men of the armed forces to secure the votes at the election. So now the Commission can request for the armed forces to support it in carrying out its functions, particularly in safeguarding the votes at the election. Section 28 of the Act stipulates that not later than 360 days before the election, INEC shall issue a notice of an election. That's by publication on their notice boards and websites. Section 28, subsection 4, provides that there shall not be a substitution of candidate except where a candidate dies. And a political party shall submit the name of the candidate that is substituted for the dead candidate within 7 days. Within 7 days. Now, section 29 of the Act is an amendment of the old section 31 of the Electoral Act. Now, it's important to read this section now, to explain it a little, because it has been playing out in the courts over the last few months in pre-election matters. Section 29(1) makes it a law for political parties to conduct their primaries and submit the list of their candidates at least 180 days before the elections. Further, the list must have emerged from primaries that were validly conducted by the political parties. Subsection 5 of it provides that only aspirants who participated in the primaries and have reasonable grounds to believe that any information given by its political party in relation to the requirements for contesting any election can file a suit. Now, it's only somebody who has participated in the election, in the primary election, that can challenge the name of the candidate that is submitted. And you don't just challenge the qualification of such a candidate. The challenge must relate to the qualification, constitutional qualification of that candidate. Now, subsection 6 of section 29 provides that where the court determines that the information in the affidavit is false, and note again, only as it relates to the constitutional requirement of eligibility, the court shall make an order disqualifying the candidate. That's the candidate whose name was submitted to the commission as a valid winner of the primary election. Now, section 29, subsection 8. Subsection 8 provides that any political party that presents to the commission an unqualified candidate commits an offense and is liable upon conviction to a fine of 10 million naira. We've seen in the past where political parties submit underage candidates only for the commission to exclude such a candidate, and the political party will go to court to challenge the exclusion of their candidates. So now, if you have been found to have compromised by submitting the name of an unqualified candidate, you are liable to be fined. Now, section 31 is an amendment of the old section 35, and it provides that a candidate can withdraw his candidature by a notice in writing and delivered to his political party, who in turn will convey the same to the INEC not less than 90 days before the election. And the notice has to be signed by the candidate. I'm sure we are aware of some cases in courts currently where there is dispute over the withdrawal or otherwise of the candidate, and also there is a recent decision of the Supreme Court on that. Section 35 of the Act has made some additional amendments. It was previously section 34 of the Act, the old Act. Subsection 1 provides that the Commission shall publish at their offices and the websites full names of the candidates and their addresses 150 days before the election. While subsection 2 and 3 of section 32 provides that a political party observes, where a political party observes that the name of its candidate is missing on the list published, it should notify the Commission in writing with an affidavit not later than 30 days, not later than 90 days for the election. And very importantly, it should be noted that the failure to notify the Commission shall not be a ground to invalidate the subsequent election that was conducted without that candidate's name on the ballot. Section 33 amends, the amended section 33 provides that political parties are not allowed to substitute candidates except in the case of death or voluntary withdrawal based on the decision of the court. And they shall conduct fresh primaries within 14 days thereafter. Section 34 of B is an addition to the previous section 36 of that. And it the Commission shall suspend the election for not more than 1 day. With the situation that's happened. So this section captures, is meant to cure that lacuna from the old Act. Section 40, particularly sub 1, is an amendment of section 42 of the old Act. It provides that the Commission shall divide each local government into registration areas and electoral wards not less than 10, but no more than 20. So this is meant to decongest polling units as well as wards. That's section 41, sub 1 of the new Act, which was previously section 43. Introduces electronic voting. Previously there was this argument that electronic voting was not recognized, but now it introduces electronic voting by recognizing a electronic voting machine or device. Section 41, 4, 5, and 6 were added, and they provide that the Commission shall provide electronic election materials before an election is conducted at all polling units, and the polling agents at those polling units shall inspect the materials before, as recorded in evidence. Now, when election materials are delivered, all the polling agents who are at that point will be required to inspect the materials to ensure that they are in order, they are sealed, and are not been tampered with before election will commence. Now, Section 42 of the Act provides for the format of the ballot paper, which shall be prescribed by the Commission, and a symbol shall be adopted. Subsection 3 and 4 of Section 42, which have been added, provide that no later than 20 days before an election, INEC shall invite the political parties in writing and their candidate to inspect their symbols on the ballot papers, so you can confirm and be sure that your party symbol is properly reflected. Section 47 is new, and it gives back into the use of smart card or any other technological device by INEC. So this knocks off the argument that voting was by the card reader is not recognized. This now empowers the Commission to deploy electronic device in the conduct of the election. Section 50, subsection 2, in addition, and it empowers the Commission to decide the procedure to be used for voting at an election and transmission of results. That's why the Commission has, under this section, decided to transmit election results remotely by uploading them to their back end or front end, whatever it is. Section 51, 52, 1B. This section provides the prohibition and use of. This was a section in the old Act which prescribes the use of electronic voting machines. It has now been expunged, given Section 50 sub 2, which I just read out. Section 54 of the new Act changes the word, just change the nomenclature from blind to visually impaired. It was previously Section 56 of the old Act. Section 60, subsections 5 and 6 were added to 3 of the order, and it provides for what happens after the presiding officer must have counted the votes and announced the results at the polling unit. He shall immediately transfer the results in the manner prescribed by the Commission, and if he fails to do so, upon conviction, he shall be liable to a fine of 500,000 naira or 6 months imprisonment or both. Section 62, sub 2 and 3 provides that the Commission shall compile and maintain a register known as National Electronic Register of Election Results. And any person or political party can apply and obtain the CTC of such results. Section 64, sub 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 provides for the duties of polling officers, which is to collate and announce results which have been confirmed and verified by him. He also used the number of, the polling officer shall also use the number of accredited voters recorded and transmitted from the results from the polling units to collate and announce the result of election if the collected result at this level of collection is not correct. So basically, this section provides for checks in collection of results and transmission. Section 73, sub 2 and 3, which have been added to the previous Section 76 of the old Act, provides that any election elections conducted without prior recording in the forms prescribed by the Commission shall be invalid. So you must first enter every result in the forms prescribed by the Commission. This automatically does away with the issue of incident forms. So only the forms prescribed by the Commission would be used for recording of results. Section 75, which is an amendment of the old Section 78, provides for penalties for political associations that give false information in registrations. So if an association is found to have provided false information, a fine of 5 million or 2 years imprisonment is prescribed, or both. Section 77, subsections 2 and 3. These sections were added to the old section 80 of the Act, and they provide that every registered political party shall maintain a register of its members in both soft and hard copies, and these shall be submitted to the Commission 30 days before the primaries or congresses or the political parties. Section sub 5 is an addition to the old section 85, and it provides that failure of the political party to notify the Commission of this convention or congress shall render the congress or convention invalid. Section 84(6) of the old Act, which provides for that no measure of political party shall be received by the Commission unless 90 days before election is retained. Has been expunged, sorry. Section 84(10) is an amendment to Section 87 of the old Act, and it provides that all serving political office holders must relinquish their positions before they can qualify to participate in the electoral process, either as a candidate or as a delegate. I'm sure some of us are aware of some cases that played out in court recently over the conduct of primary elections by persons who were still holding political offices, and how some resigned shortly before the contested election. Section 88, sub 2 of the Act is an amendment of the previous section 91. It's an amendment of the previous section 91, and it provides that presidential expenses shall now be 5 billion naira. Previously, it was 1 billion naira under the old Act. Governorship expenses shall be 1 billion naira. Previously, it was 200 million. Senate and House of Reps, now 100 million. Previously, it was 70 million. State House of Assemblies and Chairman of Area Councils and local governments, 30 million. Councillorship, 5 million. And then lastly, no individual shall donate to a candidate more than 50 million naira. So these are express and they are self-explanatory. Section 91 sub 4 is an addition to Section 94 of the old Act, and it mandates the police to resolve any conflict of time and venue amongst political parties during their rallies. No political party shall be prevented from holding rallies or meetings. We understand what is going on in some states where persons, some political associations or political parties are not allowed to hold rallies, or stringent conditions are imposed on them, which they cannot comply with. This contravenes the provision of the Act. Section 97 of the old Act has been expunged. That section provides for non-existence of political party after their candidate is elected. Such candidate shall continue and complete its tenure. Meaning that if you win an election under a party and the party subsequently stops being in existence, you can continue as probably, in quotes, an independent candidate until you exhaust your tenure. That provision has been expunged. Section 111 of the new Act is an addition which provides that the chairman or vice chairman of area councils shall cease to hold office if the majority passes a resolution and it is declared that they are incapable of discharging their duties, and the declaration is verified after medical examination has been conducted and the panel has verified and accepted it. Section 112 is also a new addition, and it provides that in the event of vacancy in the office of the chairman, the speaker shall hold office for not less than 3 months, during which there shall be an election of a new chairman who shall hold the office for the unexpired term. So you don't start afresh for the unexpired term of the last chairman. Also, if the office of the vice chairman becomes vacant, the chairman shall nominate with approval of the legislative arm of the area council, appoint a new vice chairman. Section 131 of the Section 131 sub 4 and 5 were added to Section 136 of the old Act, And it provides that the chairman of the area council election tribunal shall be appointed by the chief judge of the Federal Capital Territory, and the panel shall be constituted no later than 21 days before the election. That's quite self-explanatory. Section 135, subsection 3 was added, and it provides that no election will be cancelled or questioned by reason of mistake or inconsistency in dates containing the results. So you don't come to the tribunal to complain that the date of the election was 10th of January, whereas on the result sheets was 11th of January written. So that will not be a ground for cancellation of an election result. Section 136, sub 1, amends the previous section 140, sub 1. And it provides that the court or tribunal shall nullify an election if it determines that an elected candidate was not validly elected, and it shall order the commission to conduct a fresh election no later than 90 days after that election, after a decision. Subsection 4 provides that all objections filed in election petition shall be determined in the final judgment. So you don't determine objection first before the objection. You raise the objections naturally in your response to the petition, and then argue it in your final address and to determine in the final judgment. Section 140, which is an amendment of section 145 of the old act, provides that the legal officer of the commission or legal practitioner engaged by the commission shall represent the commission at the tribunal or court. So that's also one of the areas the NBA is also looking into at this moment, giving the call for rendering pro bono services to INEC. So that is a good development, which is in line with section 140 of the act. Section 142, which is an amendment of the old section 144, provides that persons holding elective offices or members of political parties shall not be eligible to be appointed as returning officers, electoral officers, and shall be ineligible for nomination as candidates for election. Now, this is quite self-explanatory, given the need for neutrality. So basically, these are the salient provisions of the new Electoral Act. Most of the provisions of the current act are a repeat of what is captured in the old act. So I just took out time to highlight the new provisions of the act. I will have this presentation sent to the coordinator. I couldn't, share the screen, but I'll send it. Those who wish to go through it can peruse it and have a better grasp of my rundown. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Sunday, thank you so very much for that very brilliant session. We had a little glitch somewhere in between, and I think because I've noticed lots of people have been talking about the instability in the audio. So I'm sure you would also, since you said you have something written out, I'm sure that you would make it available so that we can share with colleagues to help us go through over them and be able to act accordingly. Thank you for that very prolific presentation. We really appreciate your efforts. I haven't noticed any question arising from your own segment. So while we await that, I'd like to quickly just touch on a few questions that came from the last that we didn't take. They are just pertinent questions anyway. Someone asked if, someone asked if there is going to be a dress code. I don't think I need Mr. President's approval to respond to this. We would be very tight and suits all over the place on election day. I mean, we should look comfortable. We, of course, won't look like rascals, but then let's be comfortable and prim and proper. Someone also asked when IDs will be made available and how to access them. The moment your ID cards are available. The same way you were contacted for this training is the same way you'd get information about the ID cards and all of that. The third question is, will movement be hindered for observers? That's why you have a clearance ID card, so you can be able to move from one polling unit to the other within your area, your jurisdiction of observation. So having done that, I would want to repeat that our take home from the first and the second speaker is strict compliance with the rules of engagement. And once we notice the absence of neutrality, and this is speaking to what Mr. Sunday just discussed with us, once we notice, as an observer, if you notice the absence of neutrality, indicate it in your report, or report immediately to the head of the election monitoring and observation team. Mr. President, sir, you're on. Okay, so I thought Mr. President wanted to say something. So while we are still waiting for questions to come in, I think the most important issues that have been raised are that observers would love to have the research documents, would love to have the presentations. So we would love to, at this point, reiterate that these presentations will be made available to you via emails. So just keep your fingers crossed and relax. And we also hope that we would have network issues on election day. I mean, it will be too critical. But that was on a lighter note anyways. So we'll wait for more questions before we move to the next segment. Please don't go away. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right. Okay, so I just saw a question that kind of prompted my mind, and the observer asked if I can go over the mechanisms within the IDs and other necessary items for observation. How do we distribute it? Okay, so what I said is that the IDs and whatever further information that will be given to observers will be made available just the same way this training was made known to you. It will be made available in the same manner. As a matter of fact, as the training, just as the training is ongoing right now, we've had 2 SMSs, reminder SMSs sent out to all observers. So it's the same way that observers would get notified about the collection, the availability and collection of their identity card. So don't panic, no worries, all is being taken care of accordingly and appropriately. I hope I've answered your question. So the next, yes, I've already answered this question about movement. Your ID cards will enable you to move from your residential place to the polling unit where you'll be observing the elections. So have no worries, have no fears. All of that is well taken into consideration. So someone is asking if there will be means of transportation for moving to various polling units. All of this particular subject matter will be accordingly communicated to all observers. Thank you so very much. Yes, materials will also be made available to all observers. Do not worry, we'll get them across. I believe the materials you're talking about are the materials that will have been used or referenced in this training. Those will be made available, hopefully. And may I please repeat again that your safety is principal, your safety is key. So while complying with the rules, while trying to play according to the rules of engagement, by all means, try to stay safe. We need all observers alive to be able to have a comprehensive report. So safety is key. Let's try as much as we can to stay safe and play by the rules. I think if we do all of that, we will not be having any issues to worry about. So please, if you have any other questions you want to ask, particularly as it relates to the last session we just had, which was justice was done to it by Mr. Sunday, kindly forward your questions right away and it will be treated. The caveat that we don't have questions that are sub judice. Thank you so very much, most grateful. All right, so just stay tuned. We will be right back. Thank you. Okay, so we have a few questions and observations here I'd like to quickly attend to before we move on. Some people have asked about not receiving text messages. A link was sent, that's a Adeze Amobi. A link was sent to all observers via text message, WhatsApp, and email. And except if you didn't get that, I'm sure that all of that can be rectified. Please kindly send your phone number to the Secretariat and you would have all information sent to you. Check your emails, check your junk, check the spam, just check around. You know, the DND has not enabled us to efficiently reach out to people as we would love to. So check all of those, check your trash and all of that. Just check them. They may just be lurking around. A few people have seen the emails in one corner, you know. So just check all your files and everything. I'm sure you'd find the emails there and do the needful, please. Communication will still be ongoing to ensure that all observers are brought on board to, you know, get this whole process done neatly. So don't worry about that. Someone asks when observers will commence and conclude the execution of our mandate. These details will be made available to you after today. After the training, we're going to get more information, more details about the extent, when we start, when we stop, and all of that. So don't worry, that's from Terem Yambi. Yes, Terem. So Mr. Terem, do not worry, have no fears. You'll be duly communicated with the details that you need. Okay, so let's go on to highlight of the second presentation. Yes, I've said it, I'll repeat it again. We will make available all the materials that have been consulted in the course of this training. So entertain no fear. Please, any arrangements for water transportation for areas accessible by boat only. Yes, I have attended to, I've said this before, that all of these logistics will be put into consideration, and you would hear from the MBA as to how we will have to navigate some of these murky waters. We're aware of these things, and we'll reach out to you in due course. Thank you. Okay, distinguished colleagues, we have a very brief, I think a 10 minutes presentation or 15, there we go. This presentation is going to be given to us by Chikeze Ikechukwu, apt response. They'll be talking to us about an application that can ease some certain jobs for lawyers. So please sit tight and enjoy this brief presentation. I'm taking note of all of them questions, and we will respond accordingly. Thank you so very much. Okay, so shortly before we have the presentation done, I have noticed that there is quite a great number of concerns about how materials will be, ID cards and all of that will be given out to observers. So permit me to repeat that materials will be made available to all observers in record time. And we will reach out to you in record time. Entertain no fears, entertain no worries. Your materials will be will be sent across, IDs and all of that. Incident forms that you're supposed to complete, and all of that will be made available to all observers. So have no fears. The same way you got to hear about, you got communicated about this training, it's the same way you're going to be communicated. In fact, it will be more robust if you ask me. So entertain no fears. Someone said, how will our reports based on observation of the election be collated and sent to the NBA National? Entertain no fear, that's the vice chairman of a VITRUAL branch. Thank you for that observation, or rather for sharing that concern with us. All states will have people coordinating them. So, I mean, and these informations will be made available at the time, who you're supposed to transmit all your observations to, when and how. So trust the system. We'll make all of these things available. Entertain no fears. And thank you so very much for sharing your thoughts with us. How do we get to know our various goals before that very day? Well, first things first, we have a training now that is still ongoing, which is supposed to point us in the right direction, how to go about what it is that we'll be asked to do, we volunteered to do. Now that we understand how to go about it, the specific roles that we're going to play will also be communicated to us in due process. So just exercise a little patience, and all of this will be made known in due course. So please don't go away, stay tuned, and we will be right back. Thank you so very much. Okay, so we have a few more questions, or rather we have a barrage of questions pouring in, and as much as I'm permitted and is within my knowledge, I would give responses to the questions that have been asked, and for those that will be made available answers will be made available to us on a later note. I would let you know. So we have a question about car sticker tags, you know, for observers. And so basically, I've answered this, but I will just go over it again. Isaac Ogba from Otta Branch. Mr. Isaac, perhaps you joined in a bit late, but that's okay. All of these things will be taken care of and will be dispatched to various branches to enable observers carrying with their duties. So entertain no fears. So we have Mr. Uwar Felix. At what point are the observers expected to forward their reports and to whom? All of this will be made known to you on or before that day. You would know exactly who to forward your reports to. You'll be communicated all of this vital. So entertain no fears, but beautiful interface there, you know. So someone said, if asked to know if we have measures put in place specifically for observers on the field. Well, so security apparatus will be deployed on election day across the country, not just for observers alone, but for the entire election process. So, I mean, that should cover us. And that's why I have reiterated it here that your safety is paramount. Your safety is first. So observers are encouraged to be very conscious of their environment. Keep your eyes wide open from start to finish and stay safe, you know. So it's more of God for us and every man for himself. But of course, security apparatus will be deployed for the safeguarding of all polling units across the country. I hope that has answered your question and the question of so many other people who are pretty concerned about security concerns on election days. So Faith Sunday wants to get a recap. I'm afraid I won't be able to give you that. But again, I wish to permit me to reiterate that emails will be sent out to all observers. And those emails will come with, I mean, the slides, all the materials that have been consulted in the course of this training. So that should be able to, bring you up to speed about the areas that you missed out on. And I mean, above all, we pray and hope that network won't fail us on election day. You know. Okay, so I just got information that Mr. Chikeze Ikechukwu from Apt Response is available. So please sit down tight and give him all the audience. I'm sure this will also be some moment of learning and unlearning for all of us. Thank you so very much. Mr. Chikeze, you're up. Pardon?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Standing on existing protocol, I just want to thank Mr. President for his initiative and forward thinking in this election monitoring process. So I'm just going to share with us what's working with the Nigerian Bar Association, what we are doing to support the Nigerian Bar Association with regards to election monitoring. Please tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Mr. Chikeze, if you can hear me, we can see your screen. Please proceed. And permit me to quickly add that you have just 10 minutes to give us a rundown of your presentation. Thank you so very much.
Brilliant. The time taken, noted. Okay, so I'm going to do very, very quickly, go through an overview, some of the challenges that we're working with Nigerian Bar Association to solve, and the solutions that we're using for those, and question and answers. Again, because of the time, I'm going to just be as quick as possible. Okay, so first of all, who are App Response? App Response is an app that enables users to access legal services provided by competent lawyers who are registered and accredited by the Nigerian Bar Association. Now, some of these services include emergency response. Somebody that needs access to a lawyer immediately can utilize that. Small claims, police invitation, and election monitoring. So what are the challenges for observers with election monitoring? Well, one of the main things is that it's manual and an offline process. As a result of that, there's always delays in collating the identified issues, okay? So how do we propose to deal with that? So what we do with the app is provide an easy and clear layout that will enable lawyers to be able to identify issues and quickly report them. Very simple. So this is the kind of screen the lawyer will have. And as you can see, it will enable them to report multiple incidents at the various locations, the various polling units they are at, okay? And as part of these reports, what we also capture obviously is the date, the time, the geolocation that the observer is at, and obviously the observer's detail, so that the Nigerian Bar Association Situation Room can place a call to that particular observer and identify or get additional information concerning what they have reported, okay? And obviously, as a result of that, because this information is going back to the server, there is real-time collation of incidents. So we're able to see in real time what are the issues. Again, this will enable the NBA Situation Room to quickly escalate certain issues to necessary parties that are required. And this provides also the ability for Nigerian Bar Association to be able to quickly present a more detailed reports about what they saw as observers, okay? I noted earlier, Mrs. Nkechi stated that, you know, part of the reporting is also to be able to ensure that the public have confidence in the election process. And again, Mr. President reiterated the importance of neutrality, and all of this using the app response election monitoring helps Nigerian Bar Association to actually deliver this, okay? So as I said earlier, one of the things that we capture is geolocation of the observer. So again, this will be available. So again, the Situation Room can make decisions based on where the person is at the time the incident was reported, okay? So I've tried to be as quick as possible so that I can take any questions if required.
Mr. Chikeze, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, I do not believe that there are no questions at this moment, so kindly proceed.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the whole essence of our the assistance we're providing the Nigerian Bar Association is to provide the bar with the ability to be more real time in their monitoring processes, to also gather real time information that will enable the situation room to make decisions as quickly as possible. So typically what the lawyer that's doing the observation will have to do is they recognize an issue. In fact, if I can go back to the particular screen. So they recognize an issue, they can report it. And once they report it, if they see another issue, they can place another report. So this gives them the ability to, throughout that period where they're observing, which Mrs. Nkechi said it could be as early as Thursday before the election, up to during the election. They're able to report as many incidents as possible. Again, this makes gives NBA a whole host of data to be able to analyze, make real-time decisions, and even identify where to send observers and where to keep observers away from. So I think all in all, this presents the NBA with the opportunity to be more proactive in their monitoring process and keeping everybody safe and making sure that they instill public confidence in their election process. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so very much for that presentation, Mr. Chikeze Ikechukwu. Thank you for making our time to share share your thoughts with us about this wonderful solution that you have. I haven't seen any questions yet, but you can be rest assured that if there are any questions to be asked, if there is any interface that is required, that you will be communicated and promptly too. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your efforts and your diligence in this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, do enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. So and we have the next is Nigeria's topic. The next topic we have is Nigeria's 2023 general elections, the election day procedure. I think that this perhaps is the meat of our training for today. So I encourage all observers to settle in and listen to this segment with rapt attention, and please keep the questions coming in. Before I hand over to the resource person for the next segment, we've seen some observations about setting up WhatsApp groups and all of that. Your observations are being noted and they will be duly looked into. I can assure you that everything and anything that is required to ensure that the observation is a success, Mr. President will make it available. So thank you so very much. We're grateful for your inputs. Please stay tuned. Okay, so our next resource person is Mr. Paul James. Mr. Paul James is the program manager, election, Yaga, Africa. I don't know if he is on. Is Mr. Paul available, please? While I await response from the appropriate quarters, I'm seeing a question. Someone said questions were sent as regards the app. I haven't seen any question to that effect. I'm yet to see Mr. Bolaji Gabari. I have not seen any questions. You want to please repeat the question so I can see them? Oh, okay. So the question is the usage of this app restricted or limited to the election? Chikeze, if you're still on, you want this question?
Yes, I'm still available. Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Very well. Please go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again, please?
The question is, if this application is restricted to election monitoring alone or can be used for other purposes?
Okay, that's a very good question. No, it's not restricted to the election monitoring only. As we said earlier, it's working with the Nigerian Bar Association to grant Nigerians access to lawyers that have been approved and accredited by the Nigerian Bar Association. So the election monitoring is just one of the features that lawyers will be able to utilize it for. Another feature is, for example, a small claims feature, which will allow the ordinary Nigerian to access an MBA accredited lawyer to resolve small claims, matters that can be handled in the magistrates' courts. Okay, so it's definitely not just restricted to election monitoring.
Okay, so Mr. Eddie Diong, Peter, wants to know, given the fact that this app is internet enabled, does the app backtrack to capture time where there is lost inadequate network to upload? So I think what I don't know if you get the question.
Absolutely. I mean,
okay.
One of the things that we considered when designing it is that election happens everywhere, not just in the urban areas, but also in the rural areas. So we've made it as light as possible. And we've also tried to ensure that it will capture the information when it's offline. And then when there's network, it will now upload the data just like the BVAS does. Okay, so we've definitely considered that. All
right, that's some brilliant innovation. I mean, if an application has to work in Nigeria, you've got to factor all of these issues into that.
Absolutely,
so, absolutely. Yeah, that's some really brilliant innovation. Someone wants to know, Joshua Ashiwobi would love to know how to gain access to the app. Can you please respond to that quickly?
Yeah, sure. So the app is available on Google Play Store at the moment. The version that's currently there does not include the election monitoring that I've detailed. That is going through revision by Google themselves. So the new version will have the election monitoring process, and that should be available, we're hoping, either by tomorrow or Friday.
Okay. So I guess this answers the question for those who asked if the app is on Play Store and all of that. So I mean, yes, the app is on Play Store and all. So I think that's all I can find on this segment. If there are any other questions, we'll be sure to relate same.
Thank you so much. I'll be online in case there's any additional questions.
All right, that's fine. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
Mr. Chikeze. You've done well, and we really appreciate you, the moments we've shared with you. Thank you so very much. Okay, so observers, please bring your keep your questions coming in. Let's have them coming in. Those that we can respond to, we will. Those that we do not respond to, sorry about that, but just stay tuned. Okay, so welcome back to the last segment of this training. We have Mr. James Paul. Mr. Paul, kindly take the floor. Like I earlier said, Mr. Paul will be talking about is a programs manager election with Yaga Africa. We'll be talking about Nigeria's 2023 election, general elections, the election day procedure. Sit back and listen. Thank you so very much. You're on, Mr. Paul.
Thank you very much, Alta. I want to first thank Mr. President and the leadership of the NBA for the opportunity. And if you will permit me, I might go without the video because the network is not so strong from my location. And we'll take the next 20-30 minutes to just provide overview of the election day procedure for the 2023 general elections. So I want to start first by talking about the polling unit structure that observers are going to see this time. According to INEC, elections was supposedly to be conducted in 176,846 polling units. But in the last 2 days, the commission chair told us election will not be conducted in 240 polling units. These are locations with no voters allocated to them. So elections will now be conducted in 176,606 polling units that are in every local government in every ward of the federation. So just so observers will also know that this polling unit have a special unique identifiers, the way to identify them. Every polling unit is within a state, is within a local government, within a ward, and also, of course, in the where it is domiciled, the polling unit level. So each of these polling units will have a name. Each of these polling units will have a code. The codes for the polling units range between 001 to I think 150 or thereabout now because of the new polling units that INEC have introduced. Every ward also has a code between 01 and 099, 01 and 99. And every LGA that is also within a state has a code, depending on the number of LGAs within the state. If we're talking about, for instance, Abia that has 17 LGAs, the first LGA will have code 01, the last one will have 017. Every state also has a code. I'm saying this so that when we are completing the election day checklist, we could provide information also about the codes for those locations, because it is important also in reporting, especially where there are issues, that reporting is specific to locations where we observe or identify the problems. Again, every of these polling unit, like I said, could either be a standalone polling unit or could be in clusters, or what INEC will call multiple polling units. So if it is a standalone polling unit, it will have its own name, a unique name, unique code for the local government, for the state, and for the polling unit. But then you could also go to locations where you see multiple polling units. Places like football field, for instance, you'll see more than one polling unit. Whilst all of them are in that location, they could use the same name of the location. Each of these polling units will have its own unique code. Again, for reporting, in the event we are in this multiple polling unit, we want to be specific to get the detail of the polling unit. Perhaps we could even approach INEC officials to ask for the unique code of the polling unit. That's about the polling unit. And I get the sense also that the NBA is planning to do roving observation. So it is also important that as we rove, we take these details, it will help in the reporting. So for the 2023 election, this is done also within the context of the new Electoral Act, the new provisions of the Act now that allows INEC to use technologies in the election. Also, that the election this time will be determined or will be concluded based on the number of PVCs collected, or if we like also based on number of voters that will be accredited at the polling unit level and not necessarily based on the number of registered voters. I will explain that in a bit. But just to also mention, in terms of staffing, I have just this overview, I picked them from I called them from the INEC manual for the 2023 election. I just picked the important highlights that I thought observers should know. Every polling unit will have 4 INEC officials assigned to them: the presiding officer and 3 assistant presiding officers. One of the presiding officers will be in charge of the queue, will help in directing voters to the queue, but most importantly also determining whether voters are at the correct location. When voters approach the officer, what the officer will do is to check from their voter's card to determine if they are at the correct polling unit. Now, this part is also important because we might see a lot of confusion out there on election day. INEC recently did what they call migration of voters. If you recall, in early 2021, INEC did polling unit expansion and upgraded some voting point to polling units. So what INEC did this time is just to move some voters to other polling units without necessarily providing clear communication or information to voters about where they are going to vote on election day. We saw that confusion in the mock February the 4th. So we should anticipate that those kind of confusion may also happen on the election day. So voters may approach the official for the official to confirm if they are at the correct location. And if they are not at the location where they should vote, the officer will politely inform them about where they should go to cast their ballots. The other thing that the officer that is in charge of the queue will be doing is to also be checking the cuticle on the finger of the voters, just to ensure that the voters are not coming back to vote a second time. Like we know, there will be no voting by proxy, and then people will not also be allowed to vote multiple times. So that officer will be assisting with that. The other 2 officers, one will be in charge of verification, basically checking the voters PVC using the bimodal voter accreditation system, checking the voters biometrics to ensure that it is the correct voter that is back to be part of the process. That process is called accreditation, but if you also break it further, it is both authentication and accreditation. Authentication to ensure that it is the correct voter that is there with their own PVC, and then accreditation to check the voter biometrics, to check their fingerprints or to check their facials, depending on which one is at the bimodal voter accreditation system is able to call out. So based on that, the voter is then allowed to go to the second officer, who is in charge of the register, who is also in charge of checking voter statistics. That second officer will collect the voter's PVC and determine that the details on the PVC are same as the details that are on the register of voters. And when that officer is satisfied, the officer will make a tick on the register of voters to indicate that that voter had been accredited to proceed to vote. The voter will then approach the presiding officer, who is now in charge of issuing ballot papers for voting. Before the presiding officer will issue the ballot paper, he or she has to do 3 things. He or she has to sign, stamp, and date on the back of the ballot paper before they are issued to a prospective voter. In the process of issuing the ballot paper, they are supposed to be rolled and flattened in the manner that will tell the voter when you vote, the voting should be in secret. When you vote, you should be able to close the ballot in such a way that another voter or people around the voting area may not be able to see who the voter had voted for. So after that, of course, the voter goes to mark their ballot in secret and then could either stay within the vicinity of the polling unit to observe the counting processes or retire for the day. So just to provide some highlight, in addition to the polling officials on election day, we're also going to see some authorized persons around the polling unit. Authorized in the sense there could be some sort of permission or accreditation or something that allows the people to return to the polling unit. We are going to see voters. Voters can only return to the polling unit where they had originally registered to vote. INEC officials on duty. In addition to the 4 officers we will see, we might see supervising presiding officers who may be going around to just be checking on the officers on duty. We may also see some technical officers that are now assisting with also any issues, resolving any issue that has to do with the bimodal voter accreditation system, the BVAS. We're going to see security officials, of course, in this sense, not necessarily even the Nigerian police, but even other security, other sister security agencies that will be providing support, civil defense, immigration, and the likes. All of that will have already been accredited by INEC to guarantee or provide that permission for them to observe the process. Polling agent, based on the Electoral Act, every of the 18 political parties that is contesting in the election is permitted to deploy one of their agents to the polling unit. One thing we see that is becoming a recurring problem is that sometimes you see more than one agent deployed to polling units and they will just be there causing confusion. I think it is something that we should also watch out for as we go out to observe. Of course, we are going to see other accredited observers. In addition to the MBA observers, we are going to see other domestic Nigerian observers, or either also international observers from the African Union, the ECOWAS, the European Union, National Democratic Institute, IFES, and the likes. All of them will deploy their observers. All of these are people or individuals or groups that have been accredited by INEC, and that is the only way they can get access or permission to observe the process. We will also see journalists. Now, to just provide highlights on some essential materials, on the non-sensitive materials, on the INEC checklist, INEC has about 69 of these non-sensitive materials. Of course, the other sensitive materials we know are the ballot papers and the likes, but just to provide a highlight for the ones we thought they are incredibly important that they are deployed to polling units. The BVAS, of course, this is getting its own strength from section 47.2 of the Electoral Act, which now permits INEC to use any technological means possible for voter accreditation, as well as for results transmission. So every polling unit is expected to have at least one bimodal voter accreditation system. This will be used for voter authentication, like I said, and also for transmission of accredited voter records to an INEC server. We are going to see the register of voters, of course. This will also be either on the BVAS or also the hard copy that will be on display at the polling unit. Because we are going to have different elections, there will be different ballot boxes, the one for presidential, as well as the one for the National Assembly elections, that is on the 25th. And on March 11th, we're going to see for governorship and for the state houses of assembly. Ballot boxes will be color-coded, I think in red, in black, in blue or green. So they will be color-coded based on the different election, but they will also be clearly labeled for people to be able to know or understand where to drop their ballot papers. Ballot papers will also be there. Most times ballot papers are also deployed to the polling unit in excess or according to the number on the register, not according to the number that INEC assume will come out to participate in the process. INEC officials are also expected to take account of this at the beginning of the process before the commencement of polls. There will be different INEC forms that we will see. That will be the one for the polling unit information there from EC30. That will display, it will be on display that will indicate the name of the polling unit code, like I mentioned. There will be other forms like from EC40H, which will be for taking statistics of persons with disability. There will be also from EC40G. This is now a new form that INEC is introducing in this election. This will be for taking records of canceled polling units, where elections are cancelled in a polling unit. INEC officials are expected to take record on Form EC40G, so that at the end of the election, instead of submitting Form EC8A, which is the polling unit level result sheet, it is the Form EC40G for cancelled election that will be submitted to the INEC online database. Of course, there will be gray ballot guides for assistive aids for persons with disability. There will also be indelible ink. This will be both the one in the voting cubicle and also the one that INEC officials will be using for the voter cubicle. There will be disinfectant. This is for cleaning the surface of the beavers whenever every voter comes to mark their ballot. So it's just a quick highlight of the setup procedure. As we know, the process on election is expected to commence from 8:30 to end at 2:30 in the afternoon. But before the commencement, officials are expected to come set up the voting location. In fact, the electoral guidelines had even advised, the INEC manual rather had advised that the officials should be there as early as 7 a.m. to start the setup procedure. It is expected that all campaign materials be removed. Campaign are expected to end at least 24 hours or 48 hours before the elections. So they're expected to remove all campaign materials, set up the polling unit according to the layout. Like I had mentioned, there will be an official in charge of the queue. So that official will be in the outer area of the polling unit that will be directing people to come into the polling unit. And then set up the different tables and chairs, set up also how party agents, observers should position themselves. Set up the voting cubicle. The voting cubicle is that area that is carved, is a box that is carved where people go in to mark their ballots in secret. The beavers is supposed to be also checked for operational readiness. And then before the commencement, something we should watch at, especially if we're there before the commencement of polls, the beavers is supposed to be set as 0. Everybody should be seeing that the beavers is set as 0 before voting commences. And a point to also mention that INEC now is doing a process that is called continuous accreditation and voting. So it has collapsed the process of accreditation and voting into simultaneous accreditation and voting. Both will be happening at the same time. As the voter is accredited, the voter proceeds to go and vote. The voter is issued with a ballot paper, and then the voter proceeds to go and vote. So before the commencement, the official is expected in the full view of everyone to show the ballot box that they are empty, seal the ballot box, lock them, and put them in designated places where people can see them and people will be able to mark their ballot. So after that, the voter allow accredited observers and journalists to enter the polling unit and start the process. Before the process commences, there also may be some form of voter education just to provide some ideas to voters about the procedure and what everybody is expected to do at every step of the process. Now, polls will begin at 8 a.m. Ideally, it will start officially by 8:30, but then at 8 a.m., like I said, the official is supposed to make all those arrangements like I had mentioned earlier. But to mention also most importantly here is that there will be separate queues at the beginning, depending on what the culture permits in the voting area. In some places, you could see 2 queues for men and women, but there will be an additional, whatever be the case, there will be an additional queue this time for the special interest group, for elderly, for women, and for pregnant women, visibly pregnant women, and then for persons with disability. So when all of this is done, the voter education is also provided there. The official will then declare the process open, and then the process commences. Ideally, that process should start from 8:30, but we have also seen cases in the past where these processes start earlier than 8:30. It is still okay, provided that they had done all that the guidelines have required them to do before the process commences. So I had also explained it, when the officer, when the voter, the steps, when the voter arrives, the first to do is to approach the officer in charge of the queue to determine if the voter is at the correct location. If the voter is not at the correct location, the officer will then direct the voter to where the voter should go to participate in the process politely. The officer does two things again to check the PVC of the voter to determine if they are the correct location. Just to mention that every PVC has the code for the polling unit where the voter should vote. Every PVC, to some extent, even have the name, has the code of the polling unit. So if the voter is not at the correct polling unit, the voter is directed to where they should go to vote. Yeah, so if the voter does not have a PVC, the voter will not be allowed to vote. If the voter also has a TVC, a temporary voter's card, the voter will not be allowed to vote. According to the INEC guidelines, the only access that the voter will need to participate in the process is to have a PVC. So that is the only determinant for participating in the process. Again, I said before they are permitted to vote at the entrance of the polling unit, the officer checks to determine that the voter had not previously voted. If that has been established, the voter then approach the presiding officer, the assistant presiding officer for verification. The presiding officer takes the voter's PVC, check the PVC against the beavers to determine that it is the voter. Once that is done, it will call up the information for the voter. Where that is not successful, where that is successful, the voter is then allowed to proceed to the second stage. So they check the PVC of the voter to authenticate that it is the voter's PVC, and then they begin to also check the biometrics of the voter. They check the voter's fingerprint. If that doesn't work, they then check the facial biometric of the voter. They take facial recognition and also to match that either of the two must work before the voter is allowed to proceed to collect the ballot paper. Now, we have seen also some concerns from the recent mock exercise that there were persons that registered in 2011 that the beavers was not able to recognize their biometrics. I don't know how INEC is going to resolve this before the election, but INEC has also mentioned that they are not going to be using any incident form this time around. It has to be, everybody has to be processed through the beavers. So I think that is just a point to note and something to also watch out when we go out. I don't know how INEC will want to resolve that concern. So if the voter is processed by the beavers, the voter proceeds to the assistant presiding officer. That this officer checks the details of the voter on the register of voters. Once this is confirmed and it is the correct detail, they make a tick on the register to indicate that that voter had been accredited. Then they apply indelible ink on any of the cuticle of the 5 fingers of the voter. For a general election, it's any of the 5 fingers. For the state election, it's on the thumbprint of the voter, but for general election, any of the 5 fingers, and then the voter is allowed to proceed to vote. I had mentioned earlier also that if the voter has any disability, INEC want to start disaggregating voters even by all of this. So INEC would document that on Form EC40H. So after this is done, the voter then proceeds to the presiding officer. The presiding officer checks the cuticle of the voter to ensure that that has been marked by the one that checked from the register, and then issued the ballot box, but before a ballot paper, but before they issue the ballot box, they have to sign, stamp, and date the ballot paper, and then hand it over to the voter, who then proceeds to the voting cubicle to mark their ballot. After marking the ballot in the voting cubicle, the voter then returns to where the ballot box is to drop their ballot paper. So essentially, these are the processes that will happen during voting. But then the work also begins from the end of voting. That is the close of polls. Like I had mentioned also, polls are supposed to be from 8:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon, but then they don't terminate at 2:30 until the last person on the queue had voted. But if there are no people on the queue before 2:30, it might even end before the designated time of 2:30. It is expected that the officer allows everybody that is on the queue to be processed to vote. Once it is approaching 2:30, the presiding officer will ask the security officer to stand behind the last person on the queue, which will indicate that after that person, no one will be allowed to join the queue again. So after that, after everybody had voted, the presiding officer will then declare the voting closed and then cross off all unused ballot paper. Now, to be clear also about the ballot papers, once a ballot paper is issued in a booklet, anyone that is removed from the booklet is called a used ballot paper. But there are categories to this used ballot paper, which I will also explain in a bit. Now, the ones that are remaining in the booklet and the booklet that are untouched, they are all unused ballot paper. The officer is expected to cross them off all to indicate that they will no longer be used for the polling unit. Now, for the used ballot paper, a used ballot paper could either be a spoiled ballot, an invalid vote, or a valid vote. A spoiled ballot in the sense, if in the process of usage, for instance, an INEC official wants to detach that from the booklet and it is torn, the INEC official will cross off the ballot paper and write spoil because they are supposed to take account of that at the end of the process. And then the second one is in the event that a voter mistakenly also damages the ballot paper before they are dropped in the ballot box, they could approach the INEC official and the INEC official could replace that ballot paper for them. Again, that is also crossed off. And then also at the end, we get account of that as well. The rejected ballots are the ones that the voter intention is not clear. There are a lot of features that could make a ballot rejected. One, if it is not signed, stamped, or dated by the INEC official, it will be declared invalid at the end. If it is without any marking, if it is plain, the voting system here is that we print on ballot papers. If it is plain without any marking, it will be declared invalid. If it is with the marking of a voter other than the thumb print, if the voter decides to write his or her name, it will also be declared as invalid. Now, there could also be instances where it could be smeared by ink and it's difficult to determine where exactly or where exactly the voter had voted for. That could also be declared as invalid. But the one that is smeared with ink and then it's difficult to determine who the voter had voted for, sometimes it could be objected. I mean, it could be contested by the party agents and people that are around. Sometimes it is contested and accepted at the end to be counted as a valid vote, but then the INEC official will take record of that just to provide that information at the end. Again, before I jump to the next line, just to mention that it is not also in every instances that election will end at the first ballot at the polling unit. The election is supposed to be conducted using the beavers. If the beavers malfunctioned and there is a sustained malfunction of the beavers and it is not replaced by 2:30 in the afternoon, the election for that polling unit will be suspended to continue the next day. Again, if beavers malfunction and there is a sustained malfunction for the polling unit up till 2:30 in the afternoon and there is no replacement for the beavers, the election for the polling unit will be suspended to continue the next day. If a beavers malfunction and it is replaced, it is expected that the information on the beavers that malfunction be transferred to the new beavers before the process continues. So, to the end of voting, again, just to mention that the law also permits assisted voting, especially for people with visual disability. They could take anybody of their choice, or provided that the person is not a party agent or INEC official, to go into the voting cubicle and assist them with their voting. Pregnant women, elderly, nursing mothers will be allowed priority voting. They will have a separate queue so that they are prioritized for the voting. Now, the counting, the next process, before the counting and sorting begins, the official is supposed to do something that is very critical, and I think we should watch out. The elections this time, especially because of lessons from Osun, INEC will want to transmit the number of accredited voters at the end of voting to the online election results viewing portal. It is the number of accredited voters at the end when INEC, the number of accredited voters will be used to determine the total vote score for the location. If it goes above that, if the total number of votes in a location is more than the number of accredited voters, then there could be likely overvoting and the election for the location could be canceled. So what the official is expected to do at the end is, number one, take record of the accredited voters from the beavers and then impute that record or record it on the form EC8A. EC8A is the election result sheet for the polling unit, which INEC officials keep record and also transfer from the polling unit to the ward. At the ward level is from EC8B. at the LGA level from EC8C, and then at the state level from EC8D. Now, at the polling unit level, there is from EC8A, and then there is from EC60E. 60E is the polling unit level results that is posted for public to see. It's a bigger poster that is posted at the end of the voting for the public to see the outcome of the election at the polling unit. But the from EC8A is used for keeping record of the results for the polling unit. So the official take the record of the beavers and update that on the EC8A, and then transmit the information to the INEC online server. At that point, people should be able to see that information on the INEC results viewing portal. If that is done, they are to count the number of accredited voters on the register. Remember, I told us earlier that they will be marking as people are voting, they'll be taking record on the register of voters. So at the end, they are supposed to compare all of these records as well. So they are supposed to compare this record with the total votes cast. Unused ballot, I had also mentioned, they are supposed to take that record and also include all of that on the form EC8A. They are to count the number of counter for when they detach the ballot papers from the ballot sheet, from the sheet. There usually is a part of the ballot that is remaining on the sheet. So they are supposed to count all of that as well. They should count the number of spoiled ballot papers. These are the ballot papers that have not entered the ballot box. They were damaged in the process of usage. So they count them at the end before the counting proper starts. So for the counting, of course, they are expected to put this on the flat surface. And then based on the election that will happen, if they are starting with the presidential, for instance, clearly also have different piles for the different parties. For instance, there will be a pile for rejected ballot papers, then pile for party A, party B, up to the 18th party. And then begin to, after they had, the first count is to count the rejected ballot, because the rejected ballots can be contested and they can be returned as valid ballots. So after counting the rejected ballot, they start counting the different votes according to what every party polled. So when all of this is done, they record on the form EC8A what every party got, and then also record on the form EC60E to paste at the polling unit level. They are expected to take a snapshot of the results at that level and then transmit to the INEC results portal. Again, I mentioned earlier, if for any reasons the election at the polling unit is not conclusive, especially in the where there is violence, or for some reasons the election cannot be concluded, they then complete from EC40G and transmit that instead of transmitting EC8A, they will transmit from EC40G to the INEC results portal. The form EC40G will be concluded in the process where there is suspicion for overvoting. When INEC officials put the total number of spoiled ballot, rejected ballot, valid ballot, and it's not making sense, or it's the number of accredited, the number of ballot papers in the ballot box is more than what INEC officials have in their record, then of course that's overvoting, and the results for the polling unit location will be cancelled. So in a nutshell, this is it about the procedure. I will pause here and take any question if we have. Otherwise, we can also just quickly discuss how observers will submit their reports on election day. Thank you.
Okay, brilliantly delivered there. Thank you so much for what you have done so far. I'd like to say that I think it's better that you conclude this phase, after which all questions will be taken accordingly afterwards. So please kindly proceed. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Alta. So I will stop this and then share another screen again. What's happening? Alta, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here.
I don't know why the process is slow here.
Okay, you're trying to upload the slides.
I was even trying to stop the last one, and
okay,
it's still rolling. It has not stopped.
Well, I think that might be
okay. I'll stop it for you, please.
Please do that. But while I'm waiting, just to also mention that election questionnaire, usually the questions are generated from the election day procedure, and that's why it was important we discuss the procedure before we transition into discussing the questionnaire. So the guide is from this. Of course, there will be other experiences based on maybe last election observation or some concerns that people have according to, based on whatever happening that we're seeing in the polity. The bulk of the questions come from the election day procedure. And sometimes there could be other consideration. Maybe we want to see whether the commission is mainstreaming participation of women, whether parties are mainstreaming participation of women, or even concerns around violence, things like hate speech that we see in the build up to the election. How will they also translate to, how will they impact on participation? Some of the pre-election indicators that we may have gathered. So those are the things you consider when you are building the election day form, which I thought the NBA has already. So I just wanted to provide highlight on that, but my own is not stopping. Can somebody help me?
I'm sure Wale is on top of it, and in no time it will be sorted out.
All right.
Yeah.
What do I need to do?
All right, sorry. You can share the slide now.
My screen is still rolling. I don't even know how to stop anything here now.
Okay, it might be your network, sir.
Do we have 1 minute for me to restart the computer?
Yes, by all means. If this would help, why not?
Okay. Well, let me end the task and see.
So we have not recorded any questions for your segment yet. We would have actually taken them while we're trying to sort all of this out. So I think we'll just wait out a little bit and.
Okay, wait out a bit. Let me restart. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, that's fine. While we're at it, I'd like to quickly restate that, because I've seen people keep asking how they would be able to access some of the materials that have been consulted in this training. The materials will be emailed to you accordingly. So fear not, all of these will be taken care of. Secondly, for as many people, I've seen a few questions or concerns rather about people not receiving emails and text messages. This is largely because of the DND provision in your phones, do not disturb provision. Most people have it activated on their phones, and some of these text messages will just bounce back and will not deliver. Or some, for the emails, some of these emails just get directed to spam or to other parts of not your inbox directly. So we're working around the clock to see how these things can be rectified. So in the interim, if you did not get the text message or the email, I have made available an email that you can send your WhatsApp number to. Your WhatsApp number and your email address sent to that email and will be good. Let me just, for purpose of, for just ease of reference, I would like to, I'd like to say it out here so you can just stick it in. Okay, just a moment. Okay, so send in your WhatsApp numbers and your email to this particular email, generalelections@nigerianbar.org.ng. General elections, lowercase, general elections@nigerianbar.org.ng. So thank you very much. Okay, so distinguished colleagues, I'm made to understand that a link will be made available shortly on the chat segment of this application. Just click on it and then fill out, the form will be provided. Just complete the form and submit the form, and that'll be much more easier than sending the email, your details to the email I had earlier provided. So discountenance that, and once the link is provided, we'll let you know that the link has been provided in the chat section, and then just go there, click on the link, and get the job done. Thank you for your patience and thank you for your forbearance. We're having a little glitch with restarting the presenter's system. We'll get it worked on in no time, and we will be back. So don't go nowhere. Stay tuned, and God bless. We'll be right back. Thank you so very much. Okay, so there's a question from someone who wants to know if there's a need to complete the forms and resubmit again. You don't have to. Once you have taken care of that business, I can assure you that you're up to date. You don't have to fill the form again and resubmit. Okay, so I believe that settles all of it. One would expect that questions will be pouring in about what we have had so far, because I think, to my mind, this is the meat of today's training, talking about the election day procedure, the do's and the don'ts, the things we should expect. So please, let's have your questions come in. We're eager to give you answers. Thank you so very much. Stay tuned.
Thank you very much for your patience and understanding with me. I am back. Alta, can I continue?
Yes, Mr. Paul, thank you for quickly getting.
All right, I just want to quickly provide highlights about the data collection processes. I understand the MBA will build a Google form. It's going to be an online form that will be, that link will be shared with observers and will be on our phones where we can submit our observation. I just want to provide a quick highlight of some questions that the MBA may consider that we will see on the form. This is not finalized. I had a conversation that the finalization will be done and all the materials will be shared with the participants. But then the first point to note, I had mentioned about the commencement of the polls, that it will start from 8:30 in the morning. But I think it is important as observers, especially if we have whatever plan we want to make about how we want to go out to observe, it will be important that we are there early to see whether there is compliance with the early processes, especially with the setup of the polling unit. So I expect if we're roving, we may go visit about 3, 4, 5 polling, depending on our strength of where we can cover. But I think it will be important to observe the opening processes in at least one location. For instance, I have a question that asks what time. Don't bother about this tool. Your own will be, we'll clean up this and share the final tool with everybody. Something like what time did the voting and accreditation start at the polling unit? We got a time range between 8:30 and 12 noon. It is critically important, for instance, that as we observe, especially this part, that we think about a mechanism of sharing feedback with INEC or with other stakeholders. This is going to a large extent affect the conduct of polls on election, especially feedback from stakeholders. If you recall the last 3 elections, general elections, most of these were suspended, perhaps because of the kind of reports that stakeholders also had shared with INEC before those polls. In 2011, I know observers, based on observation effort, had seen across the country that polling units were opening late. They advised INEC and INEC suspended the polls by 1 week. Now, it is important that we go into the election prepared, then we go with the assumption that since it is happening in Gombe, for instance, we can go ahead, other states can sort themselves. This is going to be a national election. For the presidential, the constituency is one. What affects one will affect the other one. As you observe election also, you do it for 2 reasons, 2 major reasons. There are other reasons. One is to provide information. 2 is to deter fraud or any manipulation. So in providing information, it is important that the information comes when it will be useful, not for us to wait until after the election to begin to say, oh, the last time we observed by 7:30 or by 8 or by 10 a.m., for instance, majority of polling units we visited did not open on time. I think INEC will need that information time-shortly as we have them, so that if INEC will want to make any pronouncement based on the election, it will be nice that we are part of, our report is considered as part of the reason why INEC is making that. So I have a time range. I think anytime from 9:30 to 10:30 could be problematic on election day, because this is an election that we have barely a 6-hour window to conduct. If election is starting late, then technically INEC may disenfranchise some voters. I know the question may be like what time the vote starts, but something to look at for. If it starts late, we may need to bring that to the attention of INEC. Mention all of this. This is also what we may see on our questionnaire, the polling unit code, because it's important that we take detail or record of locations where there are concerns, especially so that we are detailed in our reporting whenever there are issues. We want to take information also about, for instance, the officials, how many of them are in the polling unit, whether there is compliance. The guideline clearly says 4 officials. So anything less than that could impact on how INEC operates in the location. We want to also take information whether there are security agents, for instance, at the polling unit to provide security for the election. We will take record of also party agents, whether they are being deployed to the polling unit. This form that I designed for a different group, they want to focus on the first part on the critical, on some of the parties that are visible, but then there is also interest to get information about other parties when it comes to the result. So we will also ask questions around whether there are essential materials. I just provide a quick highlight of some of the materials that we may see. It is also important, like I said, that at the beginning, to know whether the BVAS is set at 0 before the commencement of polls. The question I have under CHSA, did voters have to go up any steps in order to reach the polling unit? This is tracking also accessibility. This checklist or questionnaire try to be inclusive, to think about even people with disability, whether they are able to access polling unit, or whether by INEC's design, INEC is technically disenfranchising them from participation. So the other part is about the processes. One, I said, is checking the record of people on the register, whether they are supposed to be at the polling unit or not, and also whether the BVAS is used at every point for the accreditation of voters. This was what INEC said. In 2019, a group that a more scientific approach to the observation of the election discovered that in 7% of polling units, INEC did not use the smart card reader. So it is important that INEC also stick to its own guideline. If you say it is going to use the BVAS, we expect that in every location that the BVAS is used, and that the BVAS is used throughout the process of accreditation and voting. In this questionnaire, we also try to track whether at any point the BVAS malfunction, if the BVAS malfunction was it replaced, if it malfunction was it fixed. This is important because if a BVAS is replaced, it is important that the information on the old BVAS is transferred to the new BVAS. If you recall also, some of us are conversant with what happened in Ocean. What INEC was talking at some point was about harmonization of data at the end of the poll. So that harmonization must even start from this point, that if there will be any need to change BVAS, INEC need to move information to the new BVAS. Was anyone permitted to vote without having their fingerprints or facial? Again, it is important that for everybody that comes to vote, either their fingerprint or a facial recognition is done before they are allowed to vote. This is what INEC guidelines said. Again, every voter's cuticle must be checked for indelible ink before they are allowed to vote. But before they also vote, every voter's cuticle must be marked. I said any of the 5 fingers must be marked with indelible ink before they are allowed to vote. And just continue. Sorry, the screen went blank at some point. So we also want to track whether there is any attempt at vote buying. That is becoming a recurring decimal, a recurring concern in almost all the elections that were conducted in recent time. Yeah, and it's also important to track whether the officials were professional or non-partisan. Even as we say, observers should also be non-partisan and professional. We also want to observe the officials. This document also want to track whether there is any form of intimidation or harassment. So we try to include even a likely critical incident question on the form. Here we also want to track whether everybody that was on the queue by 2:30, since they said the process must end by 2:30, whether everybody on the queue by 2:30 is provided the opportunity to be able to vote. And it is also important to know the time that the accreditation process finished. We will compare the time against the time that counting of votes also will end. For instance, if accreditation process is that the transmission of recorded number of registered and accredited voters on the BVAS is supposed to be transmitted on an INEC resource viewing portal where everybody can see. We also want to track, according to the BVAS, how many people were accredited. That's also important that we have that record. Again, before counting, we want to know the number of unused ballot papers, the number of spoiled ballot papers, even issues around rejected ballot papers. All of this have to be sorted before the main counting of polls will begin. So I'll just quickly go to the end. These are things that we all know already. The end is also about the votes for every party. Each party that come to part, that is part of the process. At the end, when the invalid votes are removed, the ones that are remaining as the votes, valid votes, are then shared to the party according to what each party scored. So we take record of this. After that, the party agents that are there are supposed to sign. According to the law, signing of the, not signing the result sheet does not invalidate the election. So they are supposed to sign the result sheet, and then they're also supposed to get a copy of the result sheet. A point you also mentioned is that the party agent can actually ask for a recount where they are not satisfied. And the guideline also said that the INEC officials can do the recount, but only once. At the end, they are supposed to take a snapshot of the result, like I said, and post on the INEC election results viewing portal. If there is any need to cancel, any reason to cancel the election results at this point, it is not the Form EC8C that is posted on the INEC results portal, but the INEC Form EC40G for the polling unit level. So I will stop here. This is just to provide a quick overview of this. Like I said, the team will share with us form and also the link to the online link where we will post our reports on election day. Thank you for listening. Alta, are you still there?
video. Okay, so we had a little bit of network glitch here and there, but we're good and we're back. Thank you, Mr. Paul, for that very insightful session. So I have looked through the question screen and I do not appear to find any questions on this particular segment. So I assume that distinguished colleagues are satisfied with what has been said and they've been able to internalize the same fully. So to this end, we will move on to the closing remarks. But before we get to the closing remarks, I would like to reiterate that we have actually displayed the link on the chat section of this webinar. Lawyers should feel free, those who have not received emails or text messages should quickly go there, click on the link, complete the forms and submit immediately. And going forward, every information, every single detail will be communicated to you. The link just got reposted again. So please, observers can just click on it and do the needful. If you have completed this form and submitted, you do not have to complete it again. So I believe that that will be that for that. The closing remarks ordinarily should be given by the first Vice President, Mrs. Linda Rose Bala. Unfortunately, before this training came to this point, she had to attend to a very urgent doctor's appointment. And as such has mandated me to just read out her very short, precise, and concise closing remarks so that we have it on the records before we go. And just give me a moment and I would read it out. Okay, so this are her exact words. I have no doubt in my mind that we have all profited from this training immensely, albeit the time has come to draw the curtains, and it is only fair that I start this phase by appreciating Mr. President for keeping faith with this very treasurable project and trusting me to pilot its affairs at this particular time. I'm most grateful, sir, and we will make you and our country proud. Permit me to quickly thank all the resource persons for doing justice to the subject matter of discourse and for creating time to share their wealth of experience and knowledge with us. God bless you richly. This program will not have been successful without the back-end staff at the MBA Secretariat. And I appreciate you all for putting in your very best in ensuring that this training has been successfully done. May I also thank all those who made our time to join in physically and virtually. I'm certain that our efforts will be rewarded by a free and fair election and indeed a better Nigeria. It is a mother's natural instinct to always look out for people around her. And to this end, may I quickly advise our observers that when we go out to observe the elections, that we apply our hearts to wisdom and stay very vigilant and cautious. We need to be alive to bring about the change that we all desire. So please stay safe. Thank you all once again and do enjoy the rest of your day. These are the words of our first Vice President, and we thank her for putting this together. We're most grateful. Before we go, I would like to reiterate it, perhaps in a more friendly language as done by the South. For all the observers, when you go out there, I beg, no go do pass on ourselves. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.